creating this opportunity for us to meet and gather and to share a few thoughts and to answer some of your questions. I'm sure that there's a lot of questions that you may have that perhaps we can answer tonight or provide you some information that will help you with some of the things that we're all dealing with. I was thinking as I was coming here tonight, and I'm thinking about different things, obviously, but one of the thoughts that just popped into my mind was the fact that as I get older and I learn a little bit more about faith, I realize that in the Bible, names are not just words. Names have meaning. They have significance. It's amazing how children were given a name and they lived up to that name, or that name kind of influenced who they were and what they did. And I was thinking about the name of the church, Living Word. Living Word. And that is important that we all remember as a community of faith. Remember the Word. The Word was in the beginning. And a few things that I'd like to share with you tonight, and I don't want to go too long. If you give me a mic and I don't have a script, I'll take an hour. I admit I'm bad about that. But I do have some thoughts that I'd like to share with you. These are thoughts actually that I shared with a few churches last weekend when I had the opportunity to do so. And I've edited it a little bit, unfortunately, because there's been some other things that have happened since we shared these words last weekend. And, one of the things that I've heard a lot lately is that it seems that all we do is talk. We just talk. It seems that all we do go to meetings. I've heard that. But I think we also need to remember that we are relational beings. And it is important to talk. And it is important to listen. And it is important to think about the other. Because we were challenged as people of faith to not only do unto others, but to love our neighbors as ourselves. To love our neighbors as ourselves. And there's a parable in there about who's your neighbor. And I won't go into it. I'm not a preacher. But you know the one I'm talking about. But if I can, I thought maybe I might have a podium, but since I don't, I'll try to do this with one hand. Bear with me. This is, like I said, these are words that I shared last weekend, and I'm trying to adapt them for tonight. We're all saddened by the tragedies inflicted on our country during the last month and beyond. Our sympathies go out to the Sterling family, the Castile family, the families of the officers who were killed in Dallas, in Baton Rouge, as well as those who were killed in Orlando in June. And if we went back through the last year or several months beyond, the list of names and families is even longer. Our local law enforcement personnel, they also need us. Amen. And we need them. Amen. We need them. The hurt from the tragic death of Trooper Vincent last year still has not healed. Amen. Our local law enforcement and their families need to know that they have our support as well. We are dealing with a new reality. Social media and the 24-hour news industry has virtually extended the streets of every city in America to cover every city in America. So what goes on in the backyard of Lake Charles is really the entire country, or at least so it seems. And like I said, while that can be a good thing, the 24-hour media, that's not bad. I mean, I'm not going to bash the media and blame it on the media. I'm not going to blame it on social media. And those things can be good things, sources of information, sources of interaction. But we are the ones that need to keep an eye out. We need to listen. It requires a balanced and a reasoned approach from all of us to dealing with the social and the political issues of the day. It is no longer enough to watch and listen to the various sources of what we now call news, we have to develop a new perspective on how this information impacts our lives and our communities. How do we do that? I think it starts with our social relationships and our interactions with each other. That's why I think dialogue is important. It is important. As we look at recent events, it is not enough to ask the question, why? When my grandson was 3 years old, he would always ask why. And no matter what I would answer, he would come back with another why. Why? And I got to thinking about that. I said, well, perhaps what we need to do is to continue the discussion and answer the more difficult questions as to what needs to be done to remove the reasons behind the whys. And one thing I want you to think about, and I see a few of them here in the audience tonight, and there's millions more just like them. Millions more. There's a new generation growing up in America. There's a new generation growing up in America. And they can't vote. They can't process everything that they see or hear. And they are seeing and hearing a lot. Perhaps some would say they're hearing and seeing too much. But they're watching what we do. Our decisions and our words and our actions will affect their tomorrow more than ours. Their tomorrow more than ours. As one who grew up in the 1960s, the sadness and the distress of recent days feels all too familiar. In the midst of the great social unrest of that time, our leaders, or at least some of them, sought to guide us through the darkness with hope. They challenged us to draw courage from what Lincoln once described as the better angels of our nature. Fortunately for us, we have a rich history made up of the words and the actions of men and women of faith, of courage, of vision. Those actions, those words can guide us in the way forward. Give you an example. In 1963, in his eulogy for the children killed in an Alabama church bombing, Martin Luther King said, "Life is hard. At times as hard as crucible steel. It has its bleak and its difficult moments. And like the ever-flowing waters of the river, life has its moments of drought and its moments of flood. Like the ever-changing cycles of the seasons, life has the soothing warmth of its summers and the piercing chill of its winters. And if one will hold on, he will discover that God walks with him and that God is able to lift him from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope and transform dark and desolate valleys into sunlit paths of inner peace." 2 years earlier, in his inaugural address, John Kennedy said that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. Two men looking at America and reminding us of a source of hope and a source of encouragement. Two men from different perspectives, two men from different positions, the two men seeing the same thing and saying a similar thing. Gandhi, who you might remember from years past, he's famously remembered for saying, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." I checked out that quote and found that that's not exactly what he said. And I think that what he said is even more challenging than that. He said if we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. We need not wait to see what others may do. Again, I recognize that these are words. But these are words spoken by men who were leaders, men who were motivated to effect change, and men who understood the importance not just of words, but actions and interactions between people of faith What was true then is true today. It's true today. It has been said that unto those whom much is given, much is required. We have been given much. We as a society, as a people, as a nation, if you think about the history of the world, go back to as far back as we can go into recorded history, the hopes and dreams of mankind was based upon a nation that they didn't know the name, but they knew the foundation. It was called liberty. It was called justice. It was about freedom. Those are not just idle words. You go back to the history of this nation. You know, as Americans, we've been given a great heritage, purchased at a great cost. If our ancestors could speak to us tonight, they would remind us. They would be the first to admit that they did not get it all right all the time. They made some mistakes. They were not perfect. But they would also remind us that they did not give up. If they had given up, we would not be here tonight. Somehow, they found hope, and they found courage, and they persevered, and they worked, and they worked, and they worked, and they worked. They would remind us that in a larger sense, we represent all that they lived for and sacrificed for. We represent all that they lived for and sacrificed for. Part of the change that we speak about today has to begin within each of us. And I thought about that statement. I said, well, what do you mean begin? Is it really accurate to say begin? I don't know that it really is probably accurate to say begin. And I thought about that as I was looking at this as I was in the car. And I think that it's more accurate to say continues. Because change is ever evolving. Change is ever evolving. And if we look at these dark days, we look at these dark hours, and look at these challenging times, we cannot get discouraged. We cannot be afraid. We have been commanded not to do that. We've been commanded not to do that by our Creator. Amen. Be strong and of good courage. Have I not commanded you? For I am with you wheresoever you may go. Those words were written centuries ago. Centuries ago. True then, true now. So what we do tonight, we dialogue, we discuss, talk about issues and things. But let us resolve individually and collectively as a group gathered here tonight, that we leave here tonight resolved to continue that dialogue, to continue that process, and to do what each one of us can do individually and collectively in groups, small groups, larger groups, or whatever groups it takes, to make sure that hope is kept alive. Yeah. Hope. We are kept alive. This nation speaks to us and asks of us nothing more than those who went before us did this.